2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app. RevoFitness.com.au or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
Today we're recording on Gadigal country.
And we'd like to pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the Gadigal people.
I know you're gonna dig this.
It's like I've been given like an extra sprinkle of something.
You got layers.
Yeah, I got layers.
I was just thinking, I'm like, we're just such beautiful storytellers.
You're making a lot of sense today, girl. No, I'm done.
Let's jump into it, honest to God. So today we have Dan Sultan in studio.
Welcome.
Hey, Dan.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good.
That's
So
good.
before we kick off, can you just tell us a little bit about your community? Who's your mob? Where are you from?
Yeah, so my community is I grew up in Melbourne, in the city. My mob are Eastern Islander and Gurindji, Central Australia. And, well, Eastern Islander more central and Gurindji is sort of northwest from there. And that's on my mother's side. On mum's side, we also have Afghanis, so that's the Cameliers. And that's where Sultan or Sultan comes from.
Wow, yeah.
And some Irish as well. My father's side is Irish descent.
Yeah. So is it proper pronouncing Sultan? Should we?
I think it just depends on where you live.
Where you are? Yeah.
Sultan is, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually kind of love that. Like Dan Sultan. Like
I'd
that's.
say when I'm feeling a bit more pretentious, I'll go, it's
Oh,
Sultan.
I would absolutely.
Yeah, let's do the intro
this-
again.
It's like-
Please welcome Dan
Yeah,
Sultan.
Dan
It's
Sultan.
like keeping up appearances, Mrs. Bucket. It's bouquet. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's Sultan.
Target is
yeah.
Tajay.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's
exactly.
good. Well, Dan, we're so excited to have you on, and you've had such an accomplished career. All of your accolades, all of these achievements really put you in the top tier with some of Australia's best icons. We're talking Troy Cassar-Daley, but so many others as well. What's it like brushing shoulders with these legends?
I was part of a show, and there was him, Frankie Yammer, Uncle Frankie Yammer, and a couple of folks from Midnight Oil, and they were talking about the 80s and some tours they were on, and I just sort of sat in.
The golden age.
You know, and I wasn't like 22. I was like, 37. But I just remember sitting there and just being really aware that I could
You're like spinning out.
have a good listen, you know.
Yeah.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And funny and, you know,
Totally.
and just having a laugh about, that time, this or whatever it is, you know.
Those stories, hey.
Well, Uncle
Like being a
Troy.
fly on the
They're
wall.
good people.
Yeah. Oh,
You know, and
he's-
especially Uncle Troy. I mean, he's the best.
Yeah. I mean, how many golden guitars has he got?
Oh.
And I was saying recently, he's got to be the most awarded Australian
Yeah.
in any
Artist.
field,
Yeah.
sports, anything.
Yeah.
He would
in
be.
history, and his wife too, who's at the top of her game for decades,
Yeah.
and same as him,
Yeah.
and they've raised a family. You know, to be a success in something, like a career, you have to sacrifice family, and I understand that narrative to an extent, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the case all the time with some special people like the Cassar-Daleys. You know, they've raised a really beautiful family, very amazing kids or young adults.
Yeah.
And both of them have just been at the top of their fields for decades.
Yeah.
You know, that family, him and Laurel, they're our heroes, you know.
It's beautiful.
And they're nice.
Yeah.
They're nice people.
And he was so
They don't-
transparent.
I've never heard them bring anyone down. I've never seen him show an ounce of, toxic ambition or competitiveness or anything
Totally.
like that. You know, really beautiful, calm, funny,
Yeah.
talented.
Well, even Matty asked
People.
like just a light-hearted question about Beyonce, and he even like gave her the biggest rap. Hey?
Yeah, I was like, as you know, one of the most awarded country artists in our country.
country
What do you think of
artist.
Cowboy Carter? You know,
and he was like, "Tell the truth,
I was
Uncle."
like, come on, we need your sign of approval.
Yeah.
There's someone who was.
But
you
he
can
wouldn't
leave this
even-
in too. There was someone who was nominated in that category this year. Like she's from the south, so
Yeah.
as far as and she's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
But there was someone who's nominated in that category at the Grammys this year who used to sing reggae with an accent.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
now they put on a cowboy hat and they've changed their accent, and
Yeah.
he's meant to be some kind of authority. Oh, why didn't he get it? It's just like, look, each to their own.
Yeah.
I'm not telling anyone what to do.
Yeah.
But these are the facts.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
Beyonce's, you know, this idea that she had no business winning that award or anything, it's just complete rubbish.
It's bullshit.
You know,
Yeah.
she's an absolute boss.
She's a huge
Yeah.
artist.
And she can, and that's the thing. It's just like Dolly and just
Yeah.
people like that.
Yeah.
They can do anything.
Totally.
And they're amazing.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be naysayers, but I think the people that are those naysayers, it says a bit more about them than anything else.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, like, when you were coming up and you were, you know, first had your eyes set on music, who were the people that stood out for you as inspiration?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always known that I'm an artist,
Mm.
and I've always known that I'm a musician. So it's my earliest, not even earliest memory. It's just always been there.
Yeah,
So I
wow.
feel very fortunate
Yeah.
for that. I mean, I grew up listening to, like anyone else, whatever was on the stereo in the house, but there were certainly things that resonated with me more than other things, and that was, generally speaking, it was the older stuff like 50s and 60s, you know, music. Dad listened to stuff from the 70s a bit, Fleetwood Mac, which I didn't mind, but I loved Jimi Hendrix. Obsessed with Jimi Hendrix. I've been playing guitar my whole life, and he's just, you know, amazing.
Yep.
And Sam Cooke,
Oh my God, yes.
you know,
Change is gonna come.
Otis Redding,
Yeah. What about
Roy
the big man,
Orbison. Roy
Elvis?
Orbison, who's got the greatest voice that anyone will ever have, you know, and an absolute genius vocalist.
So there's
you know.
real hearty artists that like they weren't like this stereotypical like pop artists. They were more like the real, I would say a bit more grunge, a bit more like deeper.
Depth, yeah.
more depth. Like they've
Soul
been
bearing.
through some stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I feel
interesting
like-
because I think for the time, you know, they were certainly pop. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, but maybe pop had a bit more to it then. I mean, that's not for me to say. I think that there's a lot of substance to a lot of different things these days, and I'm certainly not going to be one of those artists or songwriters that say, "Oh, everything's shit now and everything used to be good and now it's shit," because I don't feel that way at all. But I think you can tell there's a difference between an act and an artist.
Yeah.
And the word artist gets used pretty, in my opinion, as an artist. I think it gets
What is that difference?
It gets used pretty freely. Honesty
Yeah.
and empathy, or the capacity for empathy. So I sing songs that I haven't written from time to time. If it doesn't resonate and if I don't feel something, that's that empathy. Then it's it feels pointless to me, and I feel the same way as an audience member as well. But you know, I'm not an authority on who is or who isn't. I know that I'm an authority on myself. It's none of my business, you know. But yeah. But back then, I think famous people used to be really talented. You know, and that might be a bit of a grab. Don't use that for the socials because it's a bit of a, you know, people go, "Oh, he's going in here," but they did. I mean,
But I get what you mean.
Yeah,
like,
you look at
You had to be exceptional.
Yeah.
you know, you could sing, but you're an amazing drummer and you're an amazing tap dancer, and like just these like talented psychos, you know.
Yeah.
And that's still the case now. I mean, you look at, you know, Grande, you know, acting, singing,
Yeah.
great at impressions, you know, things like
Producing.
that.
Yeah.
Funny,
Yeah.
you know, great
Yeah.
comic timing,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So that's still present,
Yeah.
you know. And as far as Australian acts or local artists, you know, AC/DC, big time. But I hear AC/DC and I hear soul music.
Yeah.
When they were looking for a singer, this is a while ago now, I think they got Axl Rose, which I think worked for a couple of shows, and then his voice blew out and it didn't work anymore. Bless him. But, you know, that's just the way it is. But Sharon Jones, who's no longer with us, great soul singer. I was like, they got to, she would kill this, you know, singing those big So that's sort of how I always heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's the things, it's like the representation matters
Yeah.
thing, which is absolutely true. And I'd see Uncle Arch and
Oh,
Auntie
yeah,
Reuben.
bless.
Yeah.
You know, I remember being at a festival, a big festival, in a huge crowd as a kid and seeing Yotti Yindi. And, you know, that's something that I'll never forget. That didn't convince me that I could do it just because they could do it.
Yeah.
You
okay.
know, but it was certainly a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, but I saw them. I don't think they resonated with me just because they were First Nations.
Yeah.
You know, there was great music,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in my opinion, at the time and now.
Yeah.
And I was there with my cousins who'd come over from Adelaide, you know, and we were watching this stage, this huge stage.
Where at?
It was St Kilda Festival.
St Kilda Fest.
Long time ago. This huge stage with a huge crowd and big lights showing loud, and I mean, they were just owning it, you know. So that's something
Yeah.
that stuck with me.
Yeah, wow.
know.
I mean, I always think about like when I started to think about what I wanted in life and my career, like was there a light bulb moment for me? There was a light bulb moment for me. Was that the light bulb moment for you, seeing them on stage? Or
No.
you say that you didn't have like, you were innately always an artist and you felt that in yourself, but was there a moment where a switch came on where you're like, this is what I'm going to do for a living?
I was going to ask the same thing because like we talk about first and lived experiences all the time, and I guess we value those like pivotal moments because we look back on them and we're like, oh, that's where we were and now we're here. Like, what was that moment for you?
I don't think I've had that moment. Or if I did, I had it a couple of weeks ago.
There you go.
No.
And
Is your
it's
family
just
like
within me.
musical?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There wasn't heaps of music in the house, but, you know, certainly talent throughout the generations. And we didn't have much, so, you know, we didn't have a lot of things. There were certainly people worse off, but we didn't have a lot of things. So, you know, piano, I would play piano at my friends' houses, and I was really lucky though. I could remember, and I could practice in my head, you know.
Yeah,
So by the time I'd get back to whoever's place who had a piano,
Wow.
I'd been practicing.
in your head.
Yeah.
No
Wow.
way.
So I was,
That's
So you learnt
crazy.
by ear.
yeah.
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 My dad's a musician, but he's an optometrist by trade. So he looks at people's eyes constantly, but in his head, he's like doing music things. So I kind of like know when he's like,
Is he a good optometrist?
He's a great optometrist.
Well, it's working. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was saying like he can listen to something. It's so crazy, and then like any instrument, kind of pick up anything. Hey, you've met Uncle Pete. You've met Pete.
Yeah.
But saying it's so funny how you say pianos in like your friends' houses because innately we were all sort of in my family, like we loved music, but none of us like did it. But my brother knows the piano and like he loved it, but we didn't have one. So he did the exact same thing. He would like not remember music or anything, but like he would always go and play at his friend's house. I'm like, where's Troy? And he's gone down to our friend's house to like play piano. And now we all have pianos in our house. It's crazy.
That's right.
Well, that was
Yeah.
a nice marker for me. I mean, we speak
Yeah.
about those moments, and this
Yeah.
isn't exactly what you were asking, but,
Yeah.
you know, to be in my own place with a upright piano, I was like, one day.
Yeah.
And I've got that now.
And that happened a few
I don't
weeks
own
ago.
my own place. I'm working on that now.
Yeah.
To own
Yeah.
my own house with an
Yeah,
upright
yeah.
You know, so my kids are, you know, they walk past the piano and they play it, and then they continue
beautiful.
on to whatever they're doing, and
Yeah.
that's just their,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. And so I'm really proud of that. And it was an old thing that was getting thrown out, and one of those things, if anyone wants this, you know.
Old piano.
And it was a friend of a friend, and yeah, it's a nice piano.
Yeah.
It's not in tune, but
I
you
was just
know.
going to
I
say,
know.
you have to tune it up.
Well, who is?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
who
we've all
is?
got
It adds character. It's
well,
character
it
building.
does, and every time we've moved, which hopefully we'll never move, we don't have
It
to move
changes
again.
the-
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
changes a bit. It's just a
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
kind of edgy, and I just think I can relate, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, Reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app. RevoFitness.com.au or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.
Well, you've just come off the back of a massive tour, you know.
Yeah.
How many weeks has it been since you finished?
It's been, what is it, Thursday? It's been 1 week.
1 week?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Are you feeling tired?
Oh, always. Yeah. I mentioned my kids. Yeah, no. I feel good.
Yeah, what's tour life like? Do you take the fam?
Sometimes. The first show of the tour was at the Opera House forecourt.
Yep.
And that
Wow.
was huge. So again, coming back to that original question, that moment, I think I left that show. You know, I've played to big crowds before,
Yep.
but that was by far the biggest audience that I've ever had for one
Wow.
of my shows. And so I think after that show is that moment for me.
Yeah.
Of like, okay,
That's so...
you know.
That's
It's
2
so
weeks ago.
interesting that's
Yeah,
like...
it was like 3 weeks ago.
You're such a fully fledged artist, you know, and you've done so much in your career and you're having that moment now. Like, I wonder how often that happens for people if they have that moment later on in their life. You
Well,
know?
I think if you're working and if you're going for it, you move the bar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think one thing that I feel fortunate for is I remember where the bar was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, a great artist, he was on a particular radio station in Melbourne. He'd put on shows and he'd have the big street posters.
Yep.
And I remember thinking that is what I want.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had that for a long time now.
Yeah.
But I remember that was a bar for
Yeah.
me, and a great bar.
Yeah.
You know, but you move the bar.
That's right.
Yeah,
You know.
I love that.
But I feel like the other day after the Opera House, and not that I'm completely without ambition, because I'm not, but it's you know, I think after the Opera House, it's like I'm still moving the bar, but maybe just not as quickly.
Yeah,
You know, it's just like I'm just allowing myself to just
yeah.
be in this space
Yeah.
for a little bit. You know?
Is it easy for you to be present in those moments?
Yeah.
Or it is.
Fortunately,
Yeah.
I've had a lot of big moments where I haven't been,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I'm able to.
And do you remember them? Because I feel like you sort of blur them out.
I remember forgetting them,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
No, I
And
agree.
There you
I
go.
remember not,
Being in it. Yeah.
you know, I had a show. I used to work at the Falls Festival
Oh, yeah.
down in Lawn,
Yeah.
and I worked on site there. I was friends with someone who lived there, and we worked together. He was my first manager, actually, Buzz, and I would spend a lot of time down there through the year and literally raking the fields
Yeah.
of rocks. So campers on New Year's wouldn't be setting up their tents on rocks. I was digging drainage routes on the dirt roads, and the stage there is a permanent structure, and I would just look at that stage, and I was you know, a late teen and early 20s during this period, and I'd be there all year, and it was wonderful. And I'd look at that stage and I'd think one day. And then it was a record I put out, Blackbird, which was in 2015, and we were booked on the Falls. And I'd played the Falls a few times before that, but this was my biggest record at the time.
Yeah.
And the spot that I had was like 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. on that stage on the Saturday, which is the spot. You know?
Yeah. Like
Without being a headliner, where you're going on last and it's like huge.
Yeah.
But if you're one of the non-headliners, that's a really great spot. And, you know, I used to drink too much, and I wasn't drinking during the show, but I'd had a drink the few days before, you know. And I don't mean I drink a few days, I mean for the few days before,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got there and I was on stage, and before we got on, it started raining, and it just cleared out. And you just think, oh, it's just sort of worst nightmare stuff. And we got on, and the set started with like a drum intro, and it was just, and then I just watched
all these people.
like 10, 15,000 people come from
Oh,
everywhere,
wow. Look at
that.
and it was amazing. And this was my moment that I'd be on the quad bike cruising around with you know, rakes and shovels in the tray, and I'd just be looking at that stage, and then I was there, you know.
Wow.
Performing, yeah.
But I I wasn't well.
Yeah.
And I had an anxiety attack pretty soon at the start of that set. The set was fine, and we did it. But I was hanging on for dear life for that whole set.
In
Yeah.
survival mode sort of thing.
And I missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I released my next record, Killer, after that, and I was like, I won't miss it again. And we didn't get booked on the Falls again. So that's it.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah,
So
wow.
that's it.
Yeah.
And I've found peace with that. But I think about that moment, and I'm able to, especially now, I mean, I'm, coming up 7 years completely sober.
Wow.
I have a coffee and I have some bubbles in my water.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Congrats
That's
on
about
that,
it.
honestly.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
an amazing feat.
And especially now, it's all about being present. And,
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
and I've been lucky enough to stand on some incredible stages. I supported Vance Joy in the States and
Oh,
sang at
wow.
Red Rocks. And,
That's amazing.
cool.
and then just the other night over at the Opera House.
Yep.
And I'm able to be there.
Yeah,
know.
take it in
Yeah.
and be present. And
I had that experience at Falls, but I also just in general everyday life, I'm able to just
yeah.
be around. You know?
Do you,
Yeah.
when you were going through that moment of, drinking and partaking in things that maybe weren't so good for yourself, like, was that a coping mechanism for you, or was it something that you just found as a fun thing to do, or do you...
Well, I guess it's fun until it's not.
Until
you
it's
know?
not, yeah.
But yeah, coping,
Yeah.
definitely.
Coping, yeah.
And I was speaking about it with my wife before coming in, speaking about you two.
Yeah.
And that,
Biggest
and
yawns.
that- yeah, and the fact of the matter is being First Nations,
Yeah.
is that we are traumatized, and to be a young First Nations person that is attaining any kind of success in the chosen field, we have to be twice as good to get half as much, as each of you would know,
Yep.
as well as anyone else. And conversely, we've got to be half as bad to get twice the condemnation, which is all re-traumatizing and re-shaming and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, you're surviving. You're like, I mean,
Yeah,
all artists.
well, it is coping and it
Yeah.
is self-medicating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not until you stop that you're actually able to start dealing with stuff.
What made you stop?
There was a moment
Yeah.
that a lot of things made me stop. I stopped in 2018. I had a show. I was really out of it. Someone reported on it, and it got picked up by national news.
Yep.
And it was like 3 days.
Bit of an unveiling.
Of just
it was
copying.
like just
Yep.
total demonization, and like even
Yep.
to the point that a newspaper had a picture of me on the front cover, and they were like writing a story about why should we give black fellas arts grants if they're just going to piss it
Wow.
against the wall, and
Yeah.
Oh
things
my
like
God.
that. I mean, I'd won like 4 or 5 arias up to that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Was hardly pissing anything up against the wall.
Absolutely.
But that was the narrative, and it was appalling. Now,
Yeah. If your counterparts
if it-
did that, yeah.
boys will be boys or
Yeah,
whatever. You know what I
absolutely
mean?
right.
It's, or young people are rock and roll and all that
Yeah,
bullshit,
yeah.
which it is. It's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's
as
an
we all
excuse.
know, and I think most people know out there. You know,
Yep.
Yeah.
but it's just this narrative stuff. Look, so I was completely humiliated.
Yep.
And it was really scary. But it's an ego death.
Had you experienced
Which is
this
great.
like before this time? Like anything like in the media that kind
No,
of...
not like that. No,
No,
that
that
was
was
the first
like-
time. I'd sort of experienced it again, since. But no, that was the first time. And, look, that was in 2018. There were things, that my the way I used to drink that would have warranted me stopping drinking from, 2008 onwards. 2008 is when I started to drink. And I wouldn't drink every day, all day, every day, but it would just be when I did. I just couldn't trust myself, So a lot of things led to it. But it was that moment,
Yeah.
and I was like, all right, well, that's it. Enough's enough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was, I had people around me that helped me, of course.
Yeah.
My then girlfriend, who's now my wife.
Yeah. Wow.
And I went to rehab, and they spoke about the neurological side of things, which is, anywhere from 3 months to 3 years is how long it takes to reset
Yeah, wow.
your
Takes that long.
your synapses, it could be
To
3
really-
months or,
Yeah.
and I was thinking, 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then 3 months was up, and we got pregnant with our first kid.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, well, that's it. Because I always knew that I wasn't going to be a drunk parent
Yeah.
or a party kind of guy or
Yep.
Yeah.
or even, certainly not around the kids, but even, being a bit hungover the next day and being with the kids. And I always knew, and this isn't a judgment call on anyone else. This is just what I always aspired to for myself.
Mm.
And she was due a year to the day of that show where I was horrors, So I was like, well, it's pretty
Is this not like a
pretty
message or a
witchy
sign?
and
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
spirit,
Yeah.
Do you believe in that sort of stuff? Like,
Yeah.
do you get superstitious about superstitious is an overgeneralized
Well, I mean, you better
term.
believe in manifestation, because when you were raking them rocks, that's what you're doing. You're manifesting that moment it happened. You know what I
That's right.
mean?
Yeah.
No, I
Like-
absolutely do.
That's such a powerful visualization,
Yeah,
and
no,
then
I do.
it comes to life.
And that was some advice I was given when I was a kid as well, by some older rock stars.
Yeah.
Basically, there's no other way to put it. And they just said, just envision yourself doing it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think before I started coping in other ways, when I was little, I talked about playing piano in my head and all of that sort of stuff. That was my manifestation. I'd just go take myself away into myself, and I'd just spend hours
Visualization.
just
Yeah.
having this journey
Yeah,
of
wow.
being on stage and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're doing it.
I've done small stints of sobriety over the years, and last year I did about 120 days, and that was a big, since I was 18, probably the longest time.
how did you feel?
Amazing. I
Yeah.
was walking down the street one day, and I turned to my partner and I said, I can't tell you how great I feel. Like it's
Good, eh?
it's this lightness within your soul, and for me, I felt like I did it because there was a job coming that I had to be really sharp for, and so I sort of put myself through this sobriety for 120 days was where I got to, and I'd never felt like that, because since 18 or since even earlier I'd been drinking, and I'd been doing the party thing, and the alcohol is a gateway for me, for other things as well. So I've had like very much journeys down so many different paths that I'm just not proud of when I'm intoxicated. So I have been doing these like stints of sobriety, and it's been difficult, to say the least. Like, it actually isn't easy in this industry when you're totally, a part of events and the nature of how things and relationships work in this industry. Like, I'm still in my 20s. I'm hoping that, I continue down this road and one day I get it right. But I wanted to ask you, once you had made that decision and these years that have passed now, as you go on, do you find that you're getting stronger in that sobriety aspect, or do you feel like it's something that is not even a concern anymore for you?
I think it's always a concern.
Yep.
Like anything that is dangerous, it's always a concern.
Yep.
Out here, there's, what are we, like 10 stories up or, 8 stories up?
Yeah.
Standing on the edge of that is always going to be a concern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you don't do it that often,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That being said, I can be in a hotel room with a minibar and I don't go near it,
Yeah.
and I've never had a moment of like, oh, I wish I can't be in here right now, or,
Yeah.
because I decided, the thing is with an alcoholic and, and a person who is that way,
Yeah.
it's all or nothing.
Yeah. Agreed.
So the music,
Yeah.
the artistry, the work, it's all or nothing. So for me, having a bit and then just being okay and just trying to sort of ride it a bit or figure it out and figure out if I do it like this, then that's all right. That's just, it just doesn't work.
It's tricky.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I made that choice, and I make that choice every day. It's not my wife's responsibility. It's not my kids' responsibility. It's my privilege to be as good as I am for myself and for them.
Yeah.
And it's certainly my responsibility. And it's an honour. And I was able to achieve excellence before I got sober
Yeah.
many times. And So there was a real confidence that came from that.
Yeah.
Those experiences, which helps definitely. But like I said, it's ego death. I mean, for me, I was like chipping away, and there was this husk, and then in one moment, that husk is gone. And fortunately for me, that there was something behind it that I could then build on. Because it wasn't just it wasn't all bullshit, and it wasn't just and it wasn't lies or anything like that. There was a lot of substance there.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of substances as well.
Yeah. But your craft was still yours. Like, you developed
and I was born being able to do it.
Yeah.
And I was born an artist.
Yeah.
And I was born with that knowledge and that peace.
Yeah.
And that, awareness.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky. But I was also born with the work ethic to be able to do it. I was on my way to rehab thinking, I should have done this 2 years ago. And in that moment, I said, well, I'm not going to say the same thing in 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great
And
perspective.
how did getting sober affect the art?
Oh, greatly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm better than I've ever been.
Better than you've ever been, yeah.
We were talking about Joel before.
Yeah.
Who I made my most recent record with. And he's worked with me when I've been affected.
Yep.
And he's worked with me when I haven't.
Yeah.
That record that we made is beautiful. And it means something. And I have always been as honest as I possibly could be with all of my work.
Yeah.
Which I think is essential to being an artist.
Yeah.
But the big change is my capabilities of how honest I'm able to be has changed.
Okay.
Wow.
Because you might be able to be as honest as you possibly can, and that's a mindset and a heart set moving into something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you might only be able to be that honest. You might not be capable of being more honest
Being
than
like
that.
pushing
and
past
now
that.
it's like,
Yeah,
so
wow.
it's affected it greatly.
Yeah.
But, my sobriety isn't the answer. The answer is the boundary
I was gonna. Yeah.
that I've set myself.
Yep.
And I'm sure you'd know as well as anyone, when you set a boundary and you stick to it, it's so good for you.
You're good at that.
So good for your self-esteem and
fucking
moving
terrible
forward
at
and your
Agreed.
peace,
Yeah.
I want to ask a few questions about music. So
Great.
you're like, let's talk
Back to
about
music?
the
I just
the
want to say
art.
one last thing
Yeah.
on sobriety.
Yeah, for sure.
And it can be the last thing, is that there's a bit of a narrative about me personally that, I got sober for my family. And I did to an extent, but not as a father. I mean, I've been sober longer than I've been a father.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty clear, but I've seen some things pop up,
Yep.
where it's like, he's got sober for his kids. And so that implies that I was a drunk dad, which I've never been a drunk dad.
Yeah.
And that also leans into some stereotypes,
Yep.
Yeah.
which is all very good on a reel or on a post on Instagram or wherever.
Yeah.
And that is the case for some people. That's not the case for me. I got sober, and then a year later, my daughter was due. She arrived a week early because she knows everything. But yeah,
She's like, I'm coming.
I was sober 51 weeks before I became a father.
Wow.
And I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah.
I think that's
sure.
a great point. And the stereotypes, especially in the media world, like we kind of touched on like how they like to, you do one bad thing and you sort of get demonized or like.
Well, it's
You don't even need to
frustrated.
do a bad thing.
It's a scary It's a scary blackie thing.
Totally.
Scary black
100%.
man. Scary, scary black
Drunk
woman.
black
scary,
man, angry black
drunk
man,
black person. And it's this thing.
Yep.
And I've actually, we deal with it every day. I've dealt with it recently, and I won't say where because it's irrelevant. But it's,
Yeah.
but I was in a situation recently where I was profiled. I mean, I had to speak to someone about something very important.
Yeah.
And I'm not an aggressive person, and I'm not heavy-handed. These days, I know when I was unwell, I'm sure that and I know for a fact that I would have made people feel uncomfortable from time to time, and so I'll just put that out there, which I'm not proud of, and that's why I got sober, amongst other reasons. I said that was the last thing, but that was the last thing. But it happened the other day, and then I had a follow-up phone call from someone where they told me that sort of thing's unacceptable, and I was like, it had something to do with my kids, and I was like, listen, as a parent, I would react the exact same way again. Yeah. And I'll react that way every day. Yeah. And I didn't say it, but I made it very clear that I knew what was going on. Yeah. And if I didn't look the way I looked, then this phone call wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So it happens every day.
I want to ask you a question that's on this topic. You've been in the industry now for many years. You would have seen a lot of these changes. Now I feel like there is definitely more access for First Nations artists. Yeah. There's, things that have been put in place to create a bit of a safer industry. What was it like when you first started compared to what you see today? And what are some of the sort of challenges you faced?
Well, I can only speak about it from my standpoint. Yeah. And the challenges I faced when I was starting are the same challenges I face now.
Okay, yep.
So not a lot has changed, except...
Maybe.
I think a lot's changed, but I think one of my biggest struggles with the industry or with any situation is that I have always strived, and I refuse to have me being First Nations as any kind of qualifier or disqualifier. Yep. Because they're both the same. Mm-hmm. If this is a qualifier, I don't think I'm one of the best First Nation singers. I don't think I'm one of the best Australian singers. I think I'm one of the best singers. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want any qualifier in front of me that has anything else to do with my artistry.
Is that because it boxes you in or boxes you out? Yeah.
Boxes you in. If something can box you in, then it can box you out.
Oh my God, I agree with that so much.
There's a difference. You look at Yarbon, it's a celebration. Yeah. There's a difference between that. Yeah. And having a black fella stage at a festival. Yeah. There's a difference between celebration and segregation. Yeah. I agree. And I've always struggled with that. I played a festival when I was starting out, and they put me on the world music stage. Yeah, which is fine, and I was happy to play there, but they put me there because I was a black fella.
How often have you been put in that category?
Oh, I'm there now.
Yeah.
It's
Still,
What is that category? Is that just outdated? Like, do you think...
it's completely vapid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like anything like that. Yeah. Anything that speaks about
culture.
Anything that doesn't actually cut to the core of a person as an individual. Yeah. I feel is completely vapid. Yeah. Yeah. So whether it's not culture, because culture is important, and there's so it's not that at all. It's just this it's the stereotypes.
I was gonna say
I fight it every day.
Yep.
And so what I had to do is fight against that. Yep. And I still have to fight against it. But it's laziness on the part of a journalist or a society.
There's systemic.
They get to just say what we are and tell us what we are. You're this. Yep.
Stay
You're
here.
That.
Do that.
This is where you are. I'm an extremely complicated individual. Yeah. I know where I'm from. I'm Eastern Islander and I'm Gurindji. We also have Irish and Afghan on my mother's side. My father's Irish descent. My wife is Chinese and Welsh, and my kids are awesome.
That's their tribe.
I love that.
And they know where they're from too.
Yeah.
And she knows, my 5-year-old knows her flag when she sees it.
Yep.
She doesn't need to constantly prove herself. Or your kids don't.
Well, I'm just trying to prolong the chip that's coming, because it's coming. The chip on the shoulder, because this is where we are, and so I have a responsibility as a parent, to prepare her for that. But at the same time, don't want to give her my chip. You know,
She's
it's hard, but that's like any parent. I mean, how do you not just give them all your shit? You know what I mean? How do you not do that?
Yeah.
You know, and I'll just say about my upbringing, it was difficult at times, but I had a much better childhood. My parents worked hard to make sure that things were better for me than they were for them.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm doing the same for my kids.
Yeah.
And that's my healing,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
by making sure that my kids,
Looked after.
yeah, and it's not that I wasn't looked after, you know, but just, you know, on a purely superficial level, they've got the upright piano in their house, you know,
Simple.
They've got
Symbolism,
everything they
though.
need
Yeah.
to thrive and
Yeah.
to,
and they're good at it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're artists
Yeah.
already, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I'll say that they are,
Yeah.
you know,
I
no
love it.
pressure, but they are.
I know.
Well, you've spoken about how fatherhood has changed your perspective. How has it influenced the art as well? So the music, the writing that you do.
Do you like music writing? Do you find it hard?
I don't find it difficult. I love
Do
it.
you like music writing? He's
I
like,
love-
nah, I fucking hate it. Nah.
No, but you know, I mean,
I
I
love it.
watched a few documentaries, and some people don't love the
I
music
know.
writing
But
part.
I would
but
think
like,
that writing is your world, right? Writing music.
I love it.
Yeah.
you love it.
No, I do love it, and I
'Cause
love
like
it. I love it when
poetry.
it's hard, and it should be. It
Yeah.
should be hard. I mean, there are songs that come out. Sometimes a song can take as long to write as it does to sing it,
Yeah.
and the first time you ever sing it, it's written.
Yeah, wow.
Like you just go, but it's like, whoa, okay,
Damn.
and that's this kind of like being available and
Yep.
open to stuff. And I put out a song last year that I started writing when I was like 17, you know, and I finished it last year.
Wow.
So the song can take 2 minutes or it can take 20 years. It's all just still the same moment, you know. So it's yeah. I think if a song is honest to my ear and to my taste, then it will often resonate, you know. I mean, I can hear a lot of songs and I hear a line in there, and sometimes I just go, "Oh, shut up," you know.
Yeah.
Fucking shut up.
You're like, that
What does
shit.
that mean? What does that mean? You can tell that it's just been, you know, there's a
Put
lot
in
of
there
songs
for
that are
like-
written by like 17 people, and they're like big songs, and they're big, huge songs, worldwide hits. And, you know, I'm not saying that they shouldn't resonate, and
Yeah.
it's none of my business, you know, but it's not something that I personally,
Connect
Connect
with.
with.
no, not really.
Yeah.
You know, you've spoken about honesty, because I think we pride ourselves on like trying to be our most authentic self and like genuine. Do you feel the pressure to continue to produce things because you have to, or do you just go at your own pace and take your own stride with it?
I just do my own thing.
Yeah.
I've felt pressure before. Just that idea of you know, having pressure to do something or not do something. The only pressure I feel is whether I'm just being myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And even that, I don't feel any pressure because I'm, you know,
You just
I'm
accept.
just, this is it now. And I'm in a good place. You know, having kids is wonderful. It's simple. It's like, if it's good for my kids, then I'll do it. And if it's not good for them, then I won't do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very simple life.
Yeah.
And I'm never doing anything that I don't want to do.
I love that.
I never do anything I don't want to do.
Yeah.
That's
And I've never done it really. And that's
Okay.
not just something that's come with, you know, runs on the board or, you know, whatever. It's something that I've always done. And,
Yeah.
you know, and
you just trust your instincts. on
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Because
Yeah.
the fact is that there aren't any rules and there is no formula, and there is the only metric and the only way to judge any of this is if you can go to sleep at night.
If you can live with yourself like at night and like make the right choices for yourself, I feel like that's the best. Like, you know, you can only make the best decisions then, like if
Yeah.
you're listening to yourself rather than doing what other people want.
Yeah.
I mean, I
To get
haven't
there for me,
technically.
honestly.
Hey?
I mean, I've
It takes a bit to get there for me
Yeah.
to put myself sort of.
Why do you think
self-reflection
it
or, like-
takes a little?
I
Yeah.
think for so long I think I felt like to be successful as a black fellow, maybe as a queer man, I had to appeal to the people who would hire me, you know. So I sort of molded and shaped myself a little bit. And I think that as I've become older, I'm turning 30 in a couple of months, I feel like there's this whole journey of self-rediscovery, because it's like I'm not really concerned or wanting to appeal to anyone anymore.
And looking back, do you feel like that made any difference at the time, or in hindsight it just didn't even matter anyway? What do you think?
It probably made people happy, but then when I would go home, I would think I'm not even interested in doing that. I'm not even myself in that moment. Like, it's not really aligning with me. And then I would be the person who would deal with the sort of fallout of it because it was an internal feeling, you know? And I think that, I don't know, like over the years, I've just come to, I don't know, I feel like know myself more and get a little bit deeper within sort of understanding like myself. And then that's allowed me not to want to appeal.
And that's the thing with us is that, you know, because it is, we talk about the patriarchy, and let's be clear what that is. That's white men.
Yeah.
Truly.
So then there's only so many places.
Yeah.
So if you're a black fella, then you need to compete with black fellas.
Yeah.
And that it has, I've seen it affect us greatly. I've always tried to prop people up, but I've seen it, and it's difficult, and it's nothing that I begrudge anyone for. I understand, but there's only so much room for.
That's right.
There's a quota, I would never speak on what that must be like for a woman, you know, of course. But I know as a black man, you know, we're not anywhere near the top of the pile, you know, and we're just dangerous and we're scary and all of that stuff, and so there's like this competition that we're forced into because this is the world and this is the society and there can only be so many. Yeah. And so I always just completely and utterly refused to take any part in it whatsoever.
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to wrap this. But we want to say thank you so much for coming on our pod. Like, we really appreciate that you've taken the time to come in and
especially just coming post tour as well. Yeah. Like, obviously.
Oh, it's fine.
You take
tour's mellow. There's no, I don't, you know, we take it really easy on tour, so it's really nice.
Yeah,
actually.
I love no hangovers these days.
Hangovers. No, not for anyone.
Yeah.
I'll make sure of it. And they're all fine. They're healthy. They can have a drink, but not on my tour.
I love that.
There's one of those
Safe
boundaries,
space.
you know.
Yes, I love that.
It's good. It's a nice thing.
Yeah.
As an artist, you should
Creating
you know,
that
have
safe
those
space
boundaries. Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Dan.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You're so deadly. Honestly, that was the best chat, but that's all we have time for today.
If you love what you hear, leave us a rating or a little review. And if you want us to cover anything on the pod, make sure you reach out via our socials.
My handle is at Brooke.Blunt and Maddie's handle is at It's Maddie Mills. But we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
2 words, Revo Fitness. Here's a few more. Simple, 24/7, reformer Pilates, body scanners, massage chairs, squat racks, free weights, pin and plate loaded equipment, no lock-in contracts, no bullshit. All of that and more from just $9.69 a week. That's surprisingly affordable. Join now at Revo Fitness Windsor Gardens or download the Revo Fitness app, revofitness.com.au, or find the Revo Fitness app in the App Store.